Stonehenge is one of the most famous monuments in the world. Standing ominously on the windswept Salisbury Plains, it's 5,000 years old and originally consisted of over 150 stones. But everything about its origin is shrouded in uncertainty. It leaves so much to the imagination. And once a year on the Summer Solstice, a crowd of 10,000 people gather overnight to watch the sunrise, as our ancestors have done for millennia.
How cool is this?
So why? Well, let's begin the previous day, on a delightfully miserable British summer's morning. The iconic centrepiece consisted of an outer circle of 60 enormous sarsen stones. 30 stood upright, and then 30 laid horizontally on top, called lintels. But the biggest of the sarsen stones was saved for the trilithons, 2 large uprights with an adjoining lintel. 5 trilithons made up an inner horseshoe, the largest of which known as a grand trilithon, roughly 9 metres tall. Although today, it's not very grand, there's only 1 upright still standing. It's also worth noting the sheer craftsmanship involved with these stones. The builders used hammers to precisely shape the rocks how they wanted, including these protruding tenons and corresponding mortise holes, to connect the uprights and lintels. What's really impressive is that these tongue and groove joints are usually only seen in woodworking, and are a monumental feat in stone, especially with such primitive tools. Next there's the blue stones, these smaller stones that form a circle within the sarsen circle, as well as a horseshoe within the trilithons. There's not very many of these at all remaining, but they're the short ones standing in the middle. And right in the middle is the altar stone, which has since been split in 2 and partially buried when one of the trilithons fell. The whole thing is encircled by a large ditch, 100 metres in diameter, and there's also a ceremonial pathway called the Avenue, which stretches for 2 miles to the River Avon. There are a few other stones dotted around worth mentioning too, such as the 4 station stones that formed a rectangle around the perimeter. There's the heel stone, a 35-ton, 4.9 metre tall sarsen stone at the entrance to the avenue, and the slaughter stone, which originally stood upright and was never actually used for slaughtering. So this is how it would have looked when complete, although today it's in ruins. Some of the stones have simply fallen over, and many are even completely missing, having been looted as free and easy building material over the ages. But there's still so much that baffles us about Stonehenge. How did the rocks get here? The largest stones weigh almost 40 tons, and originally came from a site 20 miles away. 20 miles might not seem that far, but this was in the Neolithic age before the invention of the wheel. And the blue stones, although only weighing 3 or 4 tons each, were transported all the way from the Preseli Hills in Wales, some 140 miles away. There are various theories, of course, involving conveyor belts of logs and grease-lined tracks, but no one knows for certain, and we most likely never will. And then even more baffling is the why. Why is Stonehenge here? Well, to find out firsthand, I found myself walking through a pitch-black muddy field at 2 in the morning. You see, there are many theories that Stonehenge was a temple, or a cemetery, or some kind of clock or calendar, and there is convincing evidence to support each of these. But the calendar idea, that Stonehenge is a giant astronomical calendar or observatory of sorts, is why I'm here today. So it's about 4 o'clock in the morning on the 21st of June, the longest day, the summer solstice. And when the sun comes up in about an hour's time, I'm going to see and experience something that people have been doing for thousands of years. There are many significant alignments between the sun, the moon and Stonehenge, but the most striking can only be seen today. It will rise from behind the heel stone, precisely in line with the avenue, and perfectly framed between what's left of the Grand Trilithon and the uprights of the sarsen circle. And what's really special about this event is that they remove the normal barriers and you're allowed inside the stone circle, something that not very many people at all get to do. You can even touch the stones. And from directly underneath, you can really appreciate just how enormous they are. And to see them from this perspective, these great ancient wonders dwarfing everyone around them, really emphasise just what an enchanting place Stonehenge is. This was it, the moment that meant so much to our ancestors. They stood here on this very day thousands of years ago, crowded into the inner horseshoe as we were now. The sun would rise and the stones would channel its light into the centre of the circle, bathing us all in its golden morning glow. It was extraordinary to see and appreciate Stonehenge the way it had been intended. This was an event unchanged by time, experienced by hundreds of generations before us, and as the sun soaked everything in its wonderful light, there was a collective sense of wonder to welcome in the longest day and continue the traditions of our Neolithic ancestors.